Well, welcome back to the Student Conference and Career Fair. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. We're going to start soon with the panel, and I'll introduce our panelists for the afternoon. I know there's another session still going on, so we're just going to give that another minute or two. And hopefully you've been enjoying yourself today. You're welcome to throw something in the event in the chat, in the event chat or in the stage chat, and how you're enjoying things so far, if you have any questions, and hopefully you've had a chance to get into the networking area, which I've been spending a bit of time on today myself, meeting some great people, and also in the expo area too. So we'll just wait another 30 seconds or so to start, just as this other session is just winding down. And if you're just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. We're happy to present this event today, and we've been doing these events throughout the course of the pandemic. Really great opportunity to connect. And here we go. We just lost somebody. So we knew we might have some internet issues.
That's right.
We'll hopefully we'll get back with Linda, with the whole team. So we'll just give it another few seconds here. Again, if you're just joining, I'm going to be moderating the panel here for the next half hour or so. And feel free to throw in some questions here as well in the stage area or in the event chat or stage chat. Thanks to Angelique for being on this event as well. Angelique MacArthur, great to join. So let's get started. So if you're just joining, I see more people just joining us right now. So my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. This panel will be on for the next half hour or so. So you have an opportunity to ask the panelists any questions you'd like. I'm happy to moderate them. And I'm going to introduce Gwen McFadden as first up, Senior Global Talent Acquisition Recruiter at Dynata. Thanks for being on here, Gwen. And perhaps you can introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do, the kinds of roles that you recruit for, and maybe something about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks so much for asking me to attend. I'm really excited to share and add some value, obviously, to those attending. So I have been in recruiting for, just probably sneaking over 27 years. Right now, I work for Dynata. It's an amazing sort of data insights organization, which is really needed as we've been in this difficult situation worldwide and wanting to know, what's going on. What are we going to purchase? Those things that go in our arms. We won't call them any names at the moment. So vaccines, all that sort of thing, that data. So for me, I have been in recruiting obviously a long time. For Dynata, I drive IT roles. I drive project manager roles. We do have a fairly, large amount of roles out in the Toronto area. So, grateful that this type of platform exists and this website as well for TorontoJobs.ca. So that's a little bit about me. I've been with Dynata just a couple of months. They headhunted me from another organization, so it's really nice as a headhunter and recruiter to get headhunted. And I have a solid career in, obviously, in recruiting with other organizations. So happy to add some value and answer some great questions that come up.
Terrific. Well, thanks, Gwen. And Linda Krebs is Talent Acquisition Partner at Nokia, depending on how you pronounce it. So thanks for being here, Linda. And if you can just give people an idea as to what you do and kinds of roles perhaps that you recruit for as well.
Thank you, Marc. And like Gwen had mentioned, thank you very much for inviting me to be here and guest speak on the panel today. So as Marc mentioned, my name is Linda Krebs and I work with Nokia. And essentially I am the talent attraction partner, or talent acquisition partner for Canada. I also run the campus program manager as well for all of Nokia Canada. And I've got about 15 years of recruitment experience, mainly in IT, but also corporate. So I've done fintech as well too. And essentially, I'm excited to chat and talk about Nokia and kind of, opportunities for students. We have a very large program for students. Essentially, we hire probably about 400 and growing students annually, not including new grads. And so it's a very exciting time for us and for myself to be here and speak to everybody. So.
Terrific. Well, thanks very much, Linda. So Gwen, back to you. We'll just do a little bit of alternating back and forth, and we'll open up for discussions. But Gwen, what are you finding? Maybe some mistakes that people are making when they're applying, or they're sending their resumes, or you're interviewing them. What maybe name maybe talk about 2, 3, 4 errors, things that they can improve upon.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind, of course, everyone sort of stops when they look at a job description, they park it, they think about it, then it's already been 24 hours. Oh, I should apply. I have to update my resume. And so sometimes the resume, as most recruiters will say, you have about 5 seconds for us to kind of, if we're driving thousands and thousands of resumes, across our desk. So we really like to see, just that snippet of what you have. So don't overthink it too much. If you have a resume that's a simple resume, it can be 1 page, can be 4, it doesn't matter. We take the time to look at them. So we say you have 5 minutes, 5 seconds, but we always park it and kind of take a little bit of time. So don't overthink it. Don't kind of wait that 24 hours or just say, I'm gonna do this at this time by tomorrow, and I'm gonna get my application in. I think if there's questions that we ask, because applicant tracking systems allow us to just make sure that we're going to slot you into the right role. If sponsorship is required, we'd like to know that out of the gate so that we can kind of get that, done for you, that kind of thing. So just answer those questions. It shouldn't be a stopping point. And then, salary, you can always put in a range, if that's, I find that's kind of a sticking point where people are like, oh, I don't want to put in a range. It could be anywhere from, 50,000 to 75,000 if that's what you wish. You kind of want to leave it open. You can always put this, these 3 words, which is up for negotiation. So you can, if it has that amount of space in there, or it's not just a pick in, 50 to 60. If there is space, just say up for negotiation. So just make sure you apply. So I always say, it's like the lottery. You can't win it if you don't buy a ticket. So you have to apply to win the lottery of the new job. So yeah, that's my best advice.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So Linda, maybe Gwen mentioned about applicant tracking systems or ATSs. We've all been in recruiting for a long time, but maybe for those people that don't know what that is, maybe you can talk about how those work and how someone can be more visible for perhaps through an ATS, or what you guys use at Nokia.
So our applicant tracking system is something called Tailor, but any applicant tracking system is, more or less similar in every single organization. And it's basically a system that, and every system is kind of a little bit different. For ours at Nokia, for example, there are sometimes preset questions that you would have to answer, and it does filter out, applicants based on some of those preset questions, because essentially some of the positions that you may be posting to or applying to actually potentially has hundreds of applicants. And so it is a system to help us recruiters essentially make sure that you potentially might be qualified for the role. So a tip for that, in order to bypass and get through those application tracking systems, when you're doing like what I call it a reactive job search, when you're actually applying to jobs that are already posted and externally, is to tailor your resume to make sure, yes, still apply, but you don't have to overthink it, but still, make sure there's some of those keywords that are on there that will get you through the system. But I'm a true believer, though, even for a student, because I believe, Marc, most of the individuals here are like a student or new grads, is another thing that to think outside the box, right, is to actually to network and to reach out directly to the recruiters or gatekeepers or hiring managers that could be involved in the hiring process. And that's one way to sort of get through the door and get your application noticed out of potentially hundreds of different applications that come in.
Excellent. Gwen, is there a way of circumventing an ATS? And kind of making it more likely that a recruiter will call me?
Well, yeah, Taleo, like Linda was saying, Taleo is great. It does have some functionalities that allow the candidates coming in that they have a little bit more room to make comments. I mean, for us, obviously these are students on here too, so it's like back in the day when we used to send resumes in mail. People used to come up with all these things like put a lollipop in with the resume, because then it's sort of saying, thanks so much for taking the time to look at my resume. And then while you're doing that, have a candy or lollipop. I mean, obviously those days have long passed, but something like that, where it's just, if there is a question part, says, is there anything else? Just like, I pride myself on being on time, that kind of. So if there is a box, which we usually allow kind of that other to add just a little bit more, or even in the top part of your resume where you can highlight, it doesn't have to be a long-winded story, but just, I pride myself on whether it was those groups in university where you're like, I was in a group of 8 people, I drove this project, I kept it on time, just a few little tidbits. Those are always really helpful because we can kind of see that right away. Most recruiters will look through a resume for a student too and will go, oh, right, they put down the projects, put down those projects you were involved with, put down anything that, you had timelines, those, they were Marc related. So if you kind of think of it as like the lollipop or the candy part of that resume of getting us sort of engaged on it. So make a note, always fill out those things in the applicant tracking system. If there is an other, just add a little bit of value there. And yeah. Try your best and reach out. I like what Linda said too, because I do accept every invite on LinkedIn. I check things, obviously, if I think it's not a real profile, but it's very, very rare that is not a real profile. So of course, send me a LinkedIn invite. I accept that. And I'm open to having chats. Yeah.
Excellent. Great explanation. So if you're just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm joined by Linda Krebs, talent acquisition partner at Nokia, and Gwen McFadden, senior global talent acquisition recruiter at Dynata. So Linda, I guess with on-campus recruitment that you've been doing, how has that changed during COVID? I mean, obviously, we're presumably going out to different campuses before COVID, and what happens now? Is there a method for you to reach out to on campus?
It's funny that you say that, because Nokia, we're global, and we always had kind of that hybrid model of working remote and whatnot. And so some of our employees or full-time employees were already working remote in Canada. So it was a little bit of a big shift because we never had students actually working remote. Most of the time we would, relocate a lot of the students to our Ottawa campus. So there was a big shift in that respect, and having to have the teams and the managers who weren't familiar with remote onboarding and offboarding to get really right down to it very quickly, and also to engagement levels and activities, right? And so a lot of the times we had really fun activities for students to keep that level of engagement, to make everyone feel inclusive, the beer and pizza Fridays, things of that nature. But we can't have that virtually. I mean, you can, but it's not the same, essentially. So we've had to shift to a virtual setting. And actually, I talked about it with our students today who are finishing their summer term. And, we're always open for advice. And so we always had like different sessions where different business groups presented their what they're working on. We had, one of the lead engineers from NASA, because we have a NASA project with Nokia, talk about the NASA project, what he could share actually confidentially. We had different lunch and learn sessions, fun sessions like bingo and things like that nature. And so, I think it was a transition per se, but I think it's the new norm, really, in all honesty. And in high tech, it's such an easy thing for us to do. It's just a different way of doing things, really. So, yeah.
Great. And back to you, Gwen. One of the surveys that came out recently was asking recruiters to ask them what's the most important factor when considering a candidate. Number one was previous job experience. by far the most important. Number 2 was employee referral, and number 3 was references. Is that your order as well? Do you have a different order? Do you have other things that are important to you when you're considering a candidate?
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm a little bit different. I wouldn't necessarily go to references, only in the aspect that it is very rare that references are not good references. And most organizations have kind of moved away from that a little bit, because that can be a little bit on the risk side. So I probably don't even consider those anymore. What I do consider is, when I'm looking at resumes, probably just because of my international experience, I look at a resume for someone who has had experience outside of Canada. That's really kind of on the top of my list. Whether they've worked in a summer job in another country, that kind of thing, an international student, or have had some, volunteer work that they've done during school. So I really look at all aspects, like, oh, wow, they put their hand up for that. They've actually, done some volunteer work, or they've been outside of Canada, or they, originated outside of Canada. So that is really paramount for me, to see kind of what they accomplished. That wasn't really you have to be doing this 9 to 5, you have to be going to university, that kind of thing. And then, if they have work experience, great, but I really don't concentrate on that, necessarily placing someone in, a role that we're asking at least 1 year or less experience, or maybe 2 years or less. I would really isolate down and look at those projects that they had at school. What were they kind of driving in groups, if they had that, or what kind of tech side of things have they done? So I probably would look more at that. And then I want to highlight this here, that doesn't matter what university you go to. I'm very, very conscious that it doesn't matter. It should not be an unbiased or a biased situation where there is no top 5, there's no top 7. It is the fact that you spent the time, you put in, the effort, you did a great job at university or college, wherever you may have gone. So just please take that out of your mind, that I have to go to this university in order to be at the top of the list. Most recruiters in the world in the last 5 years have really systematically moved away from that. And I'm an old school recruiter that back in the 90s in Canada, that was an absolute no. Those had to come off of the resumes, etc. So I'm just feel confident and feel really, really proud wherever you have gone, whether it's college, anything like that. There is no biased or unconscious bias that should exist for the name of the university or college. So just adding that in there.
Perfect. Yeah, great points. Linda, we're going to have a lot of stuff we can cover, but let's talk diversity and inclusion, because that's been a topic that's been really on the forefront in the last year, especially. Maybe talk about what's going on at Nokia, or what changes have taken place as a result, or what someone might expect, for example?
It's a great topic, actually, Marc, because part of my role is the campus program management, but the other part of my role is actually equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'm a part of the committee across Canada for implementing some of these aspects. I think it is a huge hot topic since the pandemic. For Nokia, as a global aspect, there are many different projects that are going on, but I could speak on behalf of the things that we're working on in Canada and from a student perspective. So, there's a lot of focus on employer resource groups. So we have employee resource groups for individuals, for underrepresented groups, for example. So for those who identify themselves as female or non-binary or whatever it may be, they have resources that they can go to. LGBTQ plus, there's also a resource group that's there available for them as well. Things of that nature, right? And so when we look at applications from a recruitment standpoint, very much echoing kind of what Gwen had talked about, is we don't necessarily discriminate between the different schools and different things. We really look at the individual itself, whether or not you can bring your own individuality to the organization, right? So there's something that Nokia, we strive upon in terms of our mission, is like being open, empowered, and fearless. And so we want that same type of mentality from the student, regardless of where they're from, regardless of what background, regardless of education or anything of that nature, to be able to feel comfortable in applying and working at our organization. So, as much as there's, actual like projects that are going on with equity, we want to send that message out that, we definitely have a lot of initiatives in place for equity, diversity, and inclusion. So EDI, essentially. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great to hear. So Gwen, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I think that it marries exactly, or mirror images exactly what we're doing here, and and I speak a lot about it as well. I think just I come from the old school where you would just take, if you took people's names off the top and you took all their, where they went and just kind of looked at the real meat and potatoes of the resume, you really see the amazing value that anyone would bring to the table, right? So I think when you can think outside of that box. So yeah, it's really, really important to just take a look at holistically the whole person. And it's amazing as recruiters, as we go through the years of like, we feel like, it's such a window in on the resume. It's like, oh, you almost feel like you know them. By the time you pick up the phone, it's like, hi, I'm Gwen McFadden. It's like, I feel like I already know you. I've taken a look at your resume, where you've been and what you've done. So it's really a privilege for them to apply and for us to actually have a window in to their resume, because it's really their life. So I think most recruiters think of it that way. That it's a privilege. Good. Yeah.
That's great advice. So Linda, maybe talk about salaries and compensation and what students should expect, or what should they ask for? How do they come up with an amount? Should they, I get this question a lot. So students will ask, what should I say to when somebody asks me, what are they looking for? Should I say to them, well, what are you looking to pay? What are your expectations? What do you think someone should be prepared during an interview how to answer that question?
So we get this question a lot. I'm sure Gwen can probably attest to that. Here at Nokia, for students, we have pay equity because, again, we're such a global company. We base our pay based on a number of different factors, right? And so, the years, the amount of work terms that the student has completed, things of that nature, just so that we are being equal in distributing our pay scale very equally across all the students across Canada, and never mind North America and globally too, right? And so here at Nokia, that is kind of the situation with our pay rates for our students. However, when it comes to interviews with students, it's always that, kind of battle. He who talks about money first. I think for students, my recommendation is you want to find the organization that is best suited for you. Money doesn't always give you everything. So you want to ask about culture. You want to ask about the work. You want to ask about learning and development opportunities, things of that nature. If salary is really important, maybe perhaps not the first interview to ask, because, but if you have no choice and you really are inclined to ask about salary, you could ask, but just know at Nokia that, essentially, there is a sort of a process in terms of how we pay. Now, how you would ask an employer essentially is, be straightforward. I mean, I'm always a true believer, just be yourself when you're asking, like in an interview, like, and just, ask, how much are you looking to pay? Or do you have a specific salary or pay rate for this particular position? There is no harm in asking, right? It's more us who has to sort of figure out, depending on the organization that you're working with, how to best answer that, right? There's always room for negotiation, but think about salary. It's not the only important factor, especially when you're a student starting out or you're a new grad trying to get the best experience for your career. So this is where you're starting out with, right? So that's that's kind of my suggestion in that sense.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, at that point, you're more. It's more important for you to have a resume and build your resume and experience rather than necessarily what you're going to get paid. Not to say it's not important, but at that, when you're first starting out, it's probably really important, right?
Yeah. And actually, I would suggest to research it as well. I mean, essentially, you have to do some fair work a little bit yourself. There is, things like the pay scale calculator, speaking to other industry, and this is a phenomenal way for students, by the way, is to network and actually reach out over LinkedIn, for example, to other professionals who are in the field that you want to get into. And, a lot of people are inclined to, chat with you, be a mentor, find out about what the pay rate is, essentially, so, do some research yourself. So you would have a fairly good understanding. And also a lot of the schools post their ranges as well, too, for each program. So it's kind of out in the open. But you can do a lot of the research and understand kind of what your lowest is and your highest is and kind of go from there. But I do urge everybody to do their own research as well, because then you have an idea of what the market is at that point in time.
And as a little commercial, but if someone wants to do TorontoJobs.ca, hover over career resources, and there's the salary calculator option, and, and you can also choose that. So so that's great advice. Yeah. We just have a few minutes left, but just real quick, maybe some rapid fire. Maybe Gwen, favorite interview question?
Oh, my favorite interview question? Or
your favorite interview question to ask
well,
people.
I guess, if they've already been in a role or they're sitting in a role, well, the students. So I would still ask them something similar where it would be, what, why do you get up every morning to go to school, or what made you get up every morning to actually really like doing your program in school or IT? Because I find that the answer is fairly quick. I had someone ask me that years ago in Tokyo. It was it was actually the VP of marketing for Coca-Cola, and I was competing for sales to get their business. And so I was sitting in front of him. He says, well, the same question. So I've been saying this for 30 years now. So he says, what gets you up? What are you passionate about? Why do you get out of bed to do your job? And I said, oh, a thank you. And he laughed and almost fell off his chair and thought that was hysterical for the headhunter that was trying to get the business, and it was all about money. So he went running out, got another guy, came back in and said, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what she said? I asked the other headhunters that were competing up against her, do you know what she said? And this guy was actually much higher than him. And he said, she said, thank you. And it's a thank you. So he turned and looked at me from across the desk as my palms were sweating. And he said, you have my business. Do you know what the other recruiters said? And I said, no. And he said, they said money. So you should always be honest exactly what you think is your driving force. Why did I take that program? Why do I love what I do? Why do I want a job? So that's always my favorite kind of question. Or why did you take that program?
Yeah, that's great. And Linda, 1 minute, most memorable candidate and why?
Ooh, I've had a lot of amazing candidates.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
I know.
This is not prompted, right? Is it? Some people know it's not.
No, absolutely. I've had such amazing candidates. I'm trying to think.
It's not scripted here at TorontoJobs.ca.
I know, exactly.
Like maybe one that you thought, or that you're like, nah, I'm not so sure about that one. But after you talk with them, you're like, oh, wow, what a diamond in the rough. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes people surprise you actually, right? For good or for not good, essentially. But I'd have to say there was one candidate that kind of blew me out of the waters in terms of how much the candidate was prepared for the interview. Preparation is everything. So, and just the ease of, talking to that individual, right? Like, so they came with questions to ask, and they wrote it out, and but it was very free flowing. So it wasn't necessarily scripted or anything of that nature. They had, a list of 3 to 5 questions at the end, and how when you ask at the end, do you have any other questions? They came with some really challenging questions, like the one one that Marc is giving me right now, essentially, in terms of which one that I remember, because there's so many. But again, I think there was one particular candidate that did challenge me, as in somebody who's got is interviewing and 15 years of interviewing like thousands of candidates. And if you can challenge in a good way, in a professional and good positive manner, the interviewer, because again, you're also interviewing the company and the organization and the team, not us just only interviewing you as recruiters. I think that was a very memorable lifetime experience. And since then, I've seen a lot more impressive candidates from like that kind of follow that same method, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just going to add to Marc real quick. So the same question for, when you're finished your interview, the candidate should be asking the person they're talking to, why are you so passionate about the job that you do? Why do you love your job? The same question.
Always do.
Right? It's you
so
should
true.
really, they should be asking us, why do we really love our jobs? Yeah.
Challenge us. We love it. Honestly,
and
because it tells you a lot.
Who doesn't like to talk about themselves, right? Whether it's a VP or a CEO, like I'm talking about my experience too, right? It's like, oh, it's so nice to share. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
like, oh, they asked me a question about me. So that's really, really sits well with the person that's interviewing you. Yeah. Anyway.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much. I know we could go on for quite a while here, but the time is ending. But I want to thank everybody for coming to today's student conference and career fair presented by TorontoJobs.ca and TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca and powered by EventLogic with a K.ca. My name is Marc Belaiche, president of TorontoJobs.ca. The panelist, Linda Krebs, talent acquisition partner at Nokia, and Gwen McFadden, senior global talent acquisition recruiter at Dynata. And feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn. You can connect with me as well on LinkedIn. I want to thank all the speakers as well who have been on today's event. How did you like the event? Let us know. We'll send you a survey to complete within the next 24 hours. I want to also mention some other upcoming events that we are presenting. TorontoJobs.ca, the Canadian Virtual Career Fair happens on September 15th. And the TO-Tech or Tech Virtual Hiring event happens on September 29th. So if you're in tech, you want to make sure to be at that event as well. I want to thank TorontoJobs.ca, the team behind the scenes for putting all this together. If you are looking for a job, feel free to post your resume on the site or email your resume to resumes@TorontoJobs.ca. If you're an entrepreneur, visit TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca to find out how you can network with other business owners and so on. And Gahuza, it's GUHUZA.com. It's a new hiring platform coming soon. Visit gahuza.com to register now, so you'll sign up for their newsletters as well. And EventLogic with a K.ca if you'd like to sponsor, exhibit at, or speak in an upcoming event, or find out what other events are coming up. There are about 30 to 40 events coming up between now and the end of the year. Visit EventLogic with a K.ca or check out TorontoJobs.ca/news. Visit all our social media at TorontoJobs.ca on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And I just want to thank the team, Alex, Rachel, Sandra, Carla, Sarah, and more. And we actually do have throw in another few minutes that you can go into the networking area or expo area if you want to do that. You're welcome to hang out as well. So thanks very much to everybody. Thanks again to you both, Gwen and Linda, and have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.